Loneliness is a universal human experience, one that we often fear or feel discomfort by. Despite being surrounded by people, family, friends, or co-workers, there are moments when we may still feel completely isolated. In today's fast-paced, hyper-connected world, the paradox of loneliness has only grown more prevalent. It might seem contradictory that one can feel lonely in a world where we are always connected via digital devices, but this points to the deeper nature of loneliness, one that goes beyond physical solitude. As discussed in many spiritual traditions, particularly Buddhism, loneliness is not simply a result of external circumstances. It stems from within, often driven by unmet expectations and desires that we hold on to. These expectations can distort our experiences, making us feel disconnected even when we are not alone. This begs the question: can loneliness, when viewed through a different lens, be a source of strength and transformation? The answer lies in understanding the teachings of the Buddha, which provide insight into suffering, craving, and the potential for turning adversity into personal growth. To deal with loneliness effectively, we first need to explore what causes it. Many people mistakenly believe that loneliness comes from the absence of others, whether through separation, loss, or rejection. It's easy to think that when people leave us or when we are physically alone, that's the source of our suffering. But even in the midst of relationships, surrounded by loved ones, people often report feeling deeply lonely. Why is that? The key lies in understanding that loneliness arises from within. It is not the absence of people that creates the emptiness we feel. Rather, it is the gap between our expectations and reality. When our interactions with others do not meet the desires or expectations we have, we feel unfulfilled. This mismatch creates a sense of lacking, and it is this feeling that triggers loneliness. For example, you might be in a room full of friends and family, yet feel isolated because you expect deeper connections or emotional fulfillment that you aren't receiving. This highlights an important truth. Loneliness is not a condition of physical isolation, but rather an emotional and psychological state rooted in unmet desires and expectations. In Buddhism, this concept ties closely to the understanding of suffering, dukkha. The Buddha taught that suffering doesn't come from external sources alone, but from the desires and cravings we hold on to. Until these cravings are recognized and dealt with, the suffering, whether loneliness or otherwise, will persist. The analogy the Buddha uses is one of a tree. If you cut down a tree but leave the roots intact, it will continue to grow back. In the same way, if you only address the surface of loneliness without looking at its deeper causes, it will return again and again. So, how can we change our relationship with loneliness? The first step is to alter our perspective. Rather than seeing loneliness as purely negative, we can view it as an opportunity. Instead of focusing on the external world and blaming our sense of isolation on others, we can turn inward and use this time for self-reflection. Consider the story of the Buddha before his enlightenment. In his early years of spiritual practice, the Buddha followed extreme asceticism, believing that severe self-discipline was the key to enlightenment. He was accompanied by 5 monks who supported him in his efforts. These monks had great expectations for the Buddha, believing that he would soon attain enlightenment and that they would benefit from his wisdom. However, after years of harsh practices, the Buddha realized that self-mortification was not the answer. He abandoned this path, much to the disappointment of the monks who had placed their hopes in him. Feeling betrayed by his change in direction, the monks left him. The Buddha was left alone, abandoned in the wilderness. But here's the crucial part. Even though the Buddha was physically alone, he did not feel lonely. In fact, this period of solitude was crucial for his eventual enlightenment. The Buddha's solitude allowed him to turn inward and focus entirely on his own spiritual development without the distractions of external expectations. It was in this quiet, isolated state that he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. This story teaches us that loneliness, when approached with the right mindset, can be a powerful opportunity for self-discovery and growth. When we find ourselves feeling lonely, it is essential to remember that this feeling is not inherently harmful. In fact, it can be a blessing in disguise. Loneliness offers a rare opportunity to focus on ourselves, to look within, and to grow. When we are constantly surrounded by others, it's easy to get caught up in their needs, expectations, and desires, often at the expense of our own. In moments of solitude, we are given the space to reconnect with who we are, independent of others. This inward focus is essential for cultivating qualities like self-love, self-compassion, and mindfulness. Self-love is about recognizing your own worth and treating yourself with the same kindness and care that you would offer to a close friend. It means accepting yourself fully, flaws and all, without the need for external validation. When we are constantly seeking approval from others or relying on them to make us feel valued, we are setting ourselves up for disappointment, which often leads to feelings of loneliness. Self-compassion goes hand in hand with self-love. It involves being gentle with ourselves when we face challenges or when things don't go as planned. Instead of being overly critical or harsh, we can approach our difficulties with understanding and empathy. This practice not only helps to alleviate feelings of loneliness, but also fosters resilience, allowing us to cope more effectively with life's ups and downs. To turn loneliness into a blessing, there are several practical steps you can take. 1. Develop self-awareness. Begin by observing your thoughts and feelings around loneliness without judgment. What expectations do you have in your relationships that are not being met? What desires are fueling your sense of isolation? By becoming aware of these internal factors, you can begin to address them more effectively. 2. Practice meditation and mindfulness. One of the most powerful tools in Buddhism is meditation. By meditating regularly, you can train your mind to become more aware of the present moment and less caught up in feelings of loneliness or dissatisfaction. Mindfulness allows you to observe your thoughts and emotions without getting lost in them, helping to reduce the intensity of negative feelings. 3. Cultivate gratitude. Even in moments of loneliness, there are always things to be grateful for. Make a habit of reflecting on the positive aspects of your life, no matter how small they may seem. Gratitude shifts your focus away from what is lacking and helps you appreciate what is present. 4. Build inner strength. Use your time alone to focus on personal development. This could involve reading, learning new skills, or setting goals for yourself. The more you invest in your own growth, the more confident and fulfilled you will become, and the less reliant you will be on others for your happiness. 5. Seek meaningful connections. While it's important to learn how to be content on your own, human connection is still essential. Focus on building deeper, more meaningful relationships with people who support your growth. Instead of seeking quantity, prioritize quality in your interactions. There are countless examples of people who have used their experiences of loneliness to fuel personal growth and success. Take, for instance, historical figures like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., who spent long periods in isolation, whether in prison or exile. Instead of allowing this solitude to break their spirits, they used it to strengthen their resolve and clarify their purpose. Their time alone became a period of profound reflection, helping them to lead transformative movements that changed the course of history. Another example is the artist Vincent van Gogh. Despite his struggles with mental illness and isolation, Van Gogh used his solitude to create some of the most iconic works of art the world has ever seen. His ability to channel his loneliness into creative expression serves as a reminder that solitude can lead to remarkable outcomes when approached with the right mindset. Ultimately, loneliness is not something to be feared or avoided. While it can feel uncomfortable at times, it is also a gateway to deeper self-understanding and personal growth. By changing our perspective and viewing loneliness as an opportunity rather than a burden, we can transform this seemingly negative experience into a blessing. It is during these quiet, solitary moments that we have the chance to truly connect with ourselves, to reflect on our values, and to cultivate the inner strength needed to navigate life's challenges. So the next time you find yourself feeling lonely, remember that this is a powerful opportunity for growth. Embrace it, use it to your advantage, and watch as it transforms your life in ways you never thought possible. Loneliness, when approached mindfully, can be the catalyst for becoming the best version of yourself.